Okay, let's jump right into this explainer with a really fascinating paradox. We're constantly told by financial gurus and all those trending posts to avoid keeping money in the bank, right? They tell us the bank is the enemy, that cash is trash. But if you actually look at the data, millionaires hold massive cash balances. I'm talking actual physical dollars sitting in the bank that completely dwarf what the average person holds. So it kind of begs the question, if we're all supposed to be avoiding banks to build wealth, why are the balances of the ultra-rich so much bigger than ours?
Well, the answer actually lies inside a report that quietly dismantles that whole popular myth. Every 3 years, the Federal Reserve runs this thing called the Survey of Consumer Finances. It is literally the most detailed study of American wealth in existence. And what it reveals is just mind-blowing. It shows that "don't keep your money in the bank" was never actually the real lesson, the true lesson. It all comes down to understanding the critical difference between percentages versus raw dollars. Because what really matters isn't the total numbers sitting in your checking account, it's the percentage of your total net worth that number represents.
And the data proves this point perfectly. As wealth climbs, the percentage of net worth held in cash absolutely plummets. Let's take a middle-class household, sitting right there between the 25th and 50th percentile. Their cash sits at about 15% of everything they own. For most people, honestly, that percentage is dangerously high. But as you move up to affluent households, those worth over $1 million, that cash allocation falls to roughly 6%. And when you look at the top 1%, it completely collapses to just 2%. For the ultra-wealthy, their cash balance is literally a rounding error.
But wait, let's flip the lens here and look at this in raw dollars, because this is where the picture completely changes. That tiny 2% slice for the top 1%, that actually equals nearly $700,000 in cash. So both things are true at once, right? The wealthy keep far more cash than the average person, sometimes 50 times more, but they keep it as a drastically smaller slice of the total pie. They aren't avoiding the bank at all. They're just using the bank for a very narrow specific job, a reserve. And they absolutely refuse to let the bank do anything else with the rest of their money.
All right, let's move into part 1, Jake versus Marcus, the tale of two paths.
To see exactly how this plays out in the real world, let's look at a 30-year financial race between two guys, Jake and Marcus. Now, they both start today with exactly $50,000. Jake does what feels, well, responsible and safe. He parks all $50,000 in a basic savings account, paying a whopping 0.01% in interest. He feels totally protected. Marcus, on the other hand, does exactly what the wealthy do. He calculates his enough. He keeps a $15,000 emergency reserve in the bank so he can sleep comfortably at night, and he refuses to keep a single dollar more than that sitting idle. The remaining 35 grand, he deploys it into compounding assets.
Which brings us to part 2, the wealth engines.
Now, to be super clear here, these engines aren't crypto or gold. Those are really just hedges. Real wealth gets built somewhere infinitely more powerful. The first engine is honestly the least glamorous, but the most powerful. Low-cost, broad market index funds. See, Marcus isn't looking for some hot stock tip from his brother-in-law. Instead, he's buying a tiny slice of thousands of growing companies all at once. By doing this, Marcus isn't gambling, he's owning. And over the long run of American history, the broad market has historically returned around 10% a year. If you strip out inflation, which averages around 3%, Marcus is capturing roughly a 7% real return in actual purchasing power. Jake's basic savings account? It simply cannot compete with that.
The crucial point to grasp here is a super handy mental shortcut called the Rule of 72. All you do is divide 72 by your yearly return, and boom, it gives you the number of years it takes your money to double. So 72 divided by Marcus's 7% real return means his money doubles roughly every 11 years. Over a 30-year race, that's nearly 3 full doublings. His money goes from 1 to 2 to 4 to almost 7 times its original size. Meanwhile, if you run that exact same shortcut on Jake's savings account paying 0.01%, it would take over 7,000 years for his money to double just a single time. Insane, right?
Okay, so the second asset Marcus utilizes is tax-sheltered accounts. We're talking 401ks, IRAs, health savings accounts. Most people just think of these as boring retirement buckets, but that entirely misses their hidden superpower. They provide this massive, invisible return simply by preventing the tax collector from taking a yearly bite out of your growth. When you trade or earn dividends in a normal taxable account, taxes create this constant annual drag on your money.
To put a hard number on that, if Marcus had grown his $35,000 completely outside of a sheltered account, a tiny 0.5% annual tax drag compounding against him would have cost him an astonishing $78,000 over 30 years. Let that sink in. That is 78 grand lost just for using the wrong type of account for the exact same investments. And this is exactly why the wealthy relentlessly fill these tax-sheltered accounts first every single year.
And that perfectly sets up the third asset the wealthy use, business ownership. Remember that Federal Reserve data we talked about earlier? Well, business ownership sits at just 2% of net worth for the middle class, climbs to 9% for the affluent, and absolutely skyrockets to 41% for the top tier. This is hands down the single biggest structural difference between the comfortable and the genuinely wealthy. True wealth comes from owning the enterprise rather than just renting your money out to someone else's. You essentially become the bank.
This brings us to the fourth engine, income real estate. This asset has quietly minted countless everyday millionaires across the country, primarily through the mechanics of leverage. But listen, with real estate, it is absolutely vital that we look honestly at both the seductive math that gets sold on social media and the brutal reality of actually owning it.
First, let's look at the seductive math. You take $50,000 and use it as a down payment to control a massive $250,000 asset. If the property appreciates at just 3% a year, that growth is happening on the full $250,000, not just your down payment. You run that for 30 years, having a tenant's rent pay down the loan the entire time, and your original $50,000 can magically turn into a 12 times return. It sounds completely flawless, doesn't it? But you know, that clean, perfect spreadsheet math completely ignores the brutal, decidedly non-passive realities of property ownership. It totally ignores the mortgage interest you'll be paying for decades. It ignores the wildly expensive roof replacements, the furnace that suddenly dies in the dead of January, those unpredictable months where the property sits completely empty with zero rent coming in while the bank still wants their mortgage payment, and of course the ever-climbing property taxes and insurance rates.
There's a quote that captures the absolute truth of these assets perfectly. Leverage is a magnifying glass. It makes the wins bigger and it makes the losses bigger in exactly the same proportion. And that's it. That's the whole shebang. Every single asset we've talked about, stocks, businesses, real estate, they all ask you to make a fundamental trade. You have to trade the comforting illusion of certainty today for a larger but genuinely uncertain reward later.
All right, let's move into part 3, the true cost of safety.
So after 30 years of identical economic booms, market crashes, and inflation steadily eating away at the purchasing power of both men's money, it's time to finally settle the race. Jake kept all $50,000 in his supposedly safe savings account. He technically never lost a cent on paper. He never had a bad day at the bank. But invisible inflation shrank his true purchasing power down to roughly $20,000. He lost nearly 60% of his wealth's real value while feeling completely safe the entire time. Marcus, however, he navigated the crashes and the inflation by staying invested, and his $35,000 grew to over $270,000 in real inflation-adjusted purchasing power. Guys, that's a 13-to-1 gap.
Which brings us to the fifth asset and the true purpose of the bank for the wealthy. Remember Marcus's $15,000 emergency reserve? Well, he didn't leave it in Jake's basic account earning $1.50 a year. He moved it into short-term treasuries and money market funds. At today's rates, that exact same $15,000 earns nearly $570 a year. It has the exact same safety, it's backed by the government, with instant access, but it yields almost 400 times the return of a basic savings account. Pretty incredible.
To wrap up this explainer, you really have to look at your own balances and answer this vital question for yourself. What is the real cost of the idle cash you're holding at this exact moment? The massive gap between Jake and Marcus wasn't a bigger salary or some lucky stock tip. It was purely the willingness to decide exactly how much cash was enough and having the honesty and courage to put the rest of it to work. So, what's it going to be? Are you going to let your money sit comfortably and shrink, or are you ready to finally put it to work?